In the past decade, a swift evolution has occurred within the publication industry. While magazines are currently being produced in both print and digital formats, in what direction will this trade lead? This is Undressing Reality. The decline of print and evolution of digital media within the publication industry is one of the most modern and radical changes occurring within fashion. While most magazines today have progressed to sell both print and digital issues, teams are getting smaller and consumer demand is changing. Heavily affected by digital natives, print publications are having to find new ways of speaking to this demographic. But with all of this change, I wonder, has the shift from print to digital media been a positive and necessary evolution?
I think it's always good for the industry to be on its toes, and digital has certainly done that. I think it's a bit of a wild west right now, and in that side of it, because everybody knows that they need to be on digital, they need to be on social, but not everyone quite understands how that makes sense specific to their brand. I think in general it's really important to be where people are, where your readers are, and to be humble enough to kind of admit that they won't necessarily come to you in the same way they always have. You kind of have to go to them. I think that's important. The thing that has been challenging, and coming from more of a print background, is seeing the way that people are trying to shift to meet the needs of that market, and sometimes that means very zigzaggy, not necessarily cohesive brand messaging and brand storytelling. I think in general it's been good because you have to be better and be faster and be more concise and know who you are more than you ever have. But I think it can be challenging because teams are so small and you get spread so thin, and it can be easy when you are spread so thin for that message to waver a little bit. So the challenge is always how do we kind of start with the brand DNA and then figure out how we tell those stories across all those different platforms.
So I think that the way people consume information has changed. 100% people consume so much more information digitally than they did 5 years ago, than they did 3 years ago. Providing information and entertainment on those platforms is completely necessary and very worthwhile. I don't know that the business has quite caught up yet in terms of supporting that. We still hear all the time that advertisers still prefer to be in print publications. They still like the sort of legitimacy of it or the prestige of it. And I think that will need to change and catch up, because right now there's not that many ways to make a business and a living, I think, off digital media, especially not in Canada, yet. It's definitely necessary, but slow moving. One of the biggest things that's changed is that brands now have a direct line of communication to their consumers, and the ones who are doing really well with that, like say in beauty, like the Kat Von D's or the Anastasia Beauty, brands that probably wouldn't have been as huge in the era before digital communication and social particularly, they now can talk directly to their consumers. I think probably that will affect also the evolution of communication and media. Well, probably we'll all be writing for them.
I love a tangible copy of a magazine, but definitely with the way things are going, it's too slow. People have read about the information that they're putting in a magazine a month ago on social media or on the internet or on a blog, from a review that someone was at Fashion Week, and you got it 5 minutes after the show happened. So I understand that magazines are having to go digital just so that they can showcase all of their content quicker to the consumer. I'm hopeful that publications like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, who have a history and a loyal consumer, will continue to produce their magazine. However, I understand that, like I said, it's just not fast enough, and so I think that the transition to digital media is definitely necessary. I think it's also more environmentally friendly. There's less waste being produced, and like I said, the content is faster. So I think that's definitely the way things will move, and I'm sure something will even change after that we don't even know about.
I do think that everyone is making that shift to getting more of their information digitally. I do think obviously a digital native, a millennial or a Z, is going to be more likely to, it's just more, the scale is bigger, they're getting more of their information and have been doing their whole lives. But everybody is shifting as well. So, people are still reading print. Obviously, that's more older people, but those people are still, they're probably reading some of their news content on their iPad, they're reading their books digitally. So everybody is shifting. I think the millennials probably leading the way in that type of consumption, but everybody is following.
Editors used to go to shows and a month later report back on what was cool and what's happening, and so consumers had to wait, and there wasn't social media or the internet where they could live stream the show. They had to wait for these editors to tell them what was cool and what they should be buying next season. And now editors, influencers, they're wearing the pieces to the show before they've even been shown. It's crazy now. People, especially the millennials, are able to get information about everything and so quickly.
The millennials are digital and social natives, so they've grown up with having a phone and being able to access so much content through their phone. Grown up with Instagram, so that the Michael Kors show is on and then you can see the Michael Kors show right on your phone. You don't need to, again, wait. So I think the expectation of how content is produced or how it's consumed, is very much driven by that younger consumer, like the millennial generation. And I think there's also been the rise, a huge part driven by the millennial audience has really been the rise of the influencer and the blogger. That was something that, completely destabilized the publishing industry, because all of a sudden you had people who had no, formal background in publishing, being so involved and making these $1 million deals and having tons and tons of followers, in part because they were able to connect with readers. They weren't disconnected from them. They were them. And people responded to that because they felt like, I know that girl. That girl's so cool. She looks amazing. Also, she's talking to me and not at me. And I think that the dialogue that you're, at least in the sense of a dialogue, that you're able to create with social is such a huge driver for that.
While it's unclear where the future of the publication industry lies, digital content is continuing to progress and will most likely precede print in the upcoming years. Make sure to check out episode 3 on technology and retail buying, where we discuss the similar changes occurring within the retail landscape through the evolution of e-commerce. Thanks for tuning in, and please check out the rest of Undressing Reality.